This is an audio production of Hunter of the Setting Sun by N.N. Shepherd. Music by Josiah Fursanetti. Cover art by Levi Bushnell. Editing by Josiah Fursanetti and Levi Bushnell. Read by the author. Hunter of the Setting Sun. Episode 5. Emmond was going to meet his friend Arav at the small swimming pool between his house and Arav's. They were 12 and 13, close friends as their fathers worked together often in reconstruction efforts in Wythe. The swimming pond was down in a ravine at the bottom of two grassy hills. They were steep hills, bordered all around by forests, and in winters the boys would sled down the hills to the pond at the bottom. But it was summer, and summer was for swimming. Emmond enjoyed running, always prided himself on being one of the fastest of his friends, able to move through the woods quicker than anyone else. He reached the pond before Arav and sprinted to the bottom of the hill. He stripped his clothes off and hung them on a wide, fallen log, then sprang into the water as naked as the day he was born and splashed about, feeling the heat of his run fade off of him. He lay on his back in the pond and floated there, looking up at the morning sky. The boys had decided they would go swimming the day before, just the two of them, as they played in the trees near Arav's farm. Arav had built a new toy sailboat, and he wished to try it out on the small pond. There wouldn't be much wind at the bottom of the ravine, Emmond had protested, but Arav was determined, and that was good enough. As Emmond lay in the water, his thoughts drifted about and eventually settled on Eva, the girl with brown hair and eyes who was always nice to him no matter what, and looked so pretty 3 weeks earlier in the summer festival in her yellow sundress. He thought of dancing with her and wished he had, but his cowardice was too much. Not so much that he was afraid of her, but he was afraid of his friends. Even though Arav knew his friend liked the girl, Emmond knew he would make fun of him just to fit in among the other boys. Emmond didn't blame him. Voices came echoing down through the trees from the direction of Arav's house, and Emmond spun on his stomach and swam quickly through the water toward the voices. He held still, his toes digging into the soft mud of the bank, listening intently for the words. It was Arav, loud and clear, laughing and joking, even more loud than he usually was. Emmond grinned and nearly called out to the tree line as he watched for his friend when another voice came ringing from the woods. It was Calla Orbain, and Emmond was suddenly aware of how naked he was. Two thoughts sprinted into his head and took up occupancy. Calla was a girl, and Calla usually spent most of her time with Eva. Emmond stood and dove back into the water, swimming as fast as he could, Arav's loud voice booming after him through the water as he swam. He reached the other side and scrambled up the bank to the grass, then sprinted up the slope, digging into the grass and holding onto any shrub or root he could find, water flinging off his naked body. He reached the tree line and dove into a pile of leaves behind a large beech tree and turned back to the ravine. He held still, waiting, his heart beating triple time in his chest. His eyes scanned the far rim of the ravine, then back to the pond, then back to the ravine. His clothes! Emmond felt the panic burst just as three figures came out of the tree line and stood atop the hill. Arav, with a decidedly scared look on his face, Calla with her long red braid, and Eva, brown hair untied and waving in the wind. Emmond froze in place, his eyes not moving from the three of them. "He must not be here yet," Emmond could hear Arav say across the ravine. "You know how slow Emmond is." The girls giggled, and Emmond felt a burst of betrayal from his friend, but quickly it was replaced by gratitude. He was only trying to speak loudly to warn Emmond, as well as distract the girls from looking around too hard. "I can wait for him if you'd like to carry on," Arav said, again loudly. "We want to see the sailboat," Calla complained. "You promised you would sail it." "No, I'm just going to float it now," Arav said. "There's not enough wind for sailing down here." "Okay," Eva said, and Emmond flushed at her voice, even though he was hidden in the leaves. "I'd still like to see it," Calla insisted. Emmond watched as Arav's eyes widened as he must have seen Emmond's clothes sunning on the log, but his chest deflated and he scurried down the slope to the water's edge. The girls followed, and soon all three were standing ankle-deep in the water, the small boat floating out among them. If they had seen Emmond's clothes, they hadn't mentioned it. He just lay there, watching Eva, until somehow he fell asleep. Emmond woke and realized it was prison once again. The dirt walls and eroded steel bars of the Dara jail were replaced with gray stone and black iron. The gray stone made up the floor and ceiling, as well as the back wall and the two side walls. The black iron made up the front wall, and Emmond could see through these bars that there was a wide hallway and then another set of black bars across from him. He could even see more black bars to the right and left. It was some large jail, larger than he had ever seen. Even with that small sample he could view. His white robes were gone, as were his boots and his shirt. Only his pants remained. Blood and vomit smeared down the side of his face and the front of his chest, and as he eased to sit along the wall, he could tell that his hair on the right side of his face was matted with a mix of the two. His right foot lay twisted to the side, and without his boot on, he could see the dark bruising signs of intense internal damage. Just sliding it along the stone floor hurt, and he knew he might never walk on it properly again. Certainly he would need a cane, and he wondered if he would be able to hunt once he returned home. Home. Where even was the valley? Where was Harbin Point? It was as though he had fallen to that hole after Horace Relvin into another place, another world. The wall across from him turned and spun, and he could see his children, back in the small farmhouse in Dara, waiting for their father to return. He had left them. It had only been a few days, but he had gone on a crusade without any intention of coming back in a timely manner. He would return when Relvin's blood ran out, and not before. and here he was. Perhaps there was no free way out of this prison. Perhaps his children would lose their father as well. Emmond reached up behind his left ear and smoothed his fingers over the small pebble that stuck there. It felt embedded in a strange way, and he suddenly felt gross and used, as though he was a part of something far beyond him that he had no right walking into. "What are you in here for?" Emmond turned to see the man on the other side of the hallway, standing and holding the black bars. He wore a matching pair of orange pants and suit, with symbols and lines on the breast of the shirt that Emmond could not read. "I was captured aboard your blue worm," Emmond started, but cut himself off at how silly it sounded out loud. "Blue worm," the man sneered. "You on Fenny?" "What is this Fenny? The knight who brought me here spoke of it also." The man laughed. It wasn't pleasant. His hair came out of his head in thick strands that weren't exactly braids. It was all sort of gray and black and looked rather messy. Black marks covered his face, much like the ones that covered the knight who had doubly broken Emmond's ankle. "You talk funny, man. Where are you from?" "Dara," Emmond answered. "The land, ruled under the Corsole banner. You know of where I speak?" The prisoner shook his head. "Where are we now?" "Up quarter prison, number 3. Somewhere near the top. I forget where they put small crimes now." "Small crimes?" Emmond asked, really the only part of the man's sentence that he understood. "I have committed no crime." "Yeah, me neither, pal." Emmond understood the sarcasm in the man's voice. "My leg is broken," he said, as though it might explain something. The man's face darkened. "I can see that from here. You jump off the blue line or something?" Emmond started to answer, but the man's words seemed to make some sense. He was trying to put things together, trying to solve the puzzle of this place. "This blue line," he asked. "Describe it." The prisoner scratched his head with a curious look on his face. He spread his arms wide. "Goes from here to the fields, hour or so ride. Furthest train out of Sky City aside from the Black Line, but that goes all the way to Green City and doesn't move as often. It's like a super train, you know? Real fast, on a single line. Magnets or something, I don't really know." Emmond shook his head. "We don't have those back home." "I believe you on that, pal." The man laughed before asking, "What was so illegal that they brought you all the way here from a place without trains?" Emmond looked back at the wall and found that he couldn't conjure the images of his children again without great concentration. It had been so short a time. Was he already losing them? "I'm searching for the man who killed my wife," he answered. "Most guys would thank whoever did it." Emmond turned back to the prisoner, unable to find the words for such a heinous remark. It seemed the man understood what Emmond's stare meant, for he lowered his eyes and shrugged. "Obviously not you, geez. Sounds like rough work." Emmond nodded, easing his anger. "Rough indeed." "I stole a car," the man admitted, the momentary shame dissipating like steam. "Well, a couple of cars, actually. Sold them to the wrong guy, you know. Landed myself a few nights' stay in hotel number 3. He held up 3 fingers to emphasize his point. "You can shut up now," a voice said in the cell next to Emmond's. "Whistling Billy," the talkative prisoner explained to Emmond. "Doesn't like talking unless he's part of it." "Don't like it at all," the other man said. "I don't have much to say," Emmond told him, and turned back to his wall. "Suit yourself, mystery man," the prisoner said, and turned back to his own cell. There was silence then for a while. Emmond thought it was several hours, though he had no way to measure time. There were no windows, and the lights in the hallway came from glass tubes in the ceiling. They didn't flicker and bend as flame did, and he wondered how the light was so white and so stable, and contained in the glass tubes. A man in a gray suit of weak-looking armor walked down the hall at one point in the following hours, but he spoke to no one and ignored Emmond when he asked him for help, not caring that there had been some big misunderstanding. The time rolled on, and Emmond lay on the stone floor of the cell, staring at the ceiling and thinking of Eva. The dream he had of watching her in the water, splashing about Arev's sailboat, had been a sweet dream of their childhood, a memory that he cherished, but one he had forgotten for a time. The memories had been that, moments of their youth together in times before Rem was born, or when they finished their house in Dara. Good memories of good times or hard ones, but always with her, always forgotten when she was still alive before Relvin. Instead, he would remember the last time he saw her, their last conversation or kiss, not something that was years in the past, sometimes decades, something from the time before they were even husband and wife. He had dozed off slightly when more footsteps stamped down the hallway, and he roused himself and widened his eyes, still lying on the floor. He lifted his head and looked out to see a pair of men standing there at the black bars, wearing white and blue suits with symbols and numbers on the breast. It was similar to what was on the orange shirt of the prisoner across from him, but still foreign. "Ready?" one of the men asked. Neither wore the strange white helmets, and their hair was short and trim, both nearly the same way. They looked slightly similar as well, Emmond thought. "Ready?" he asked back. "Come on," the man said. Suddenly, the middle 5 bars squealed and then slid down the floor, leaving an opening into the hallway. The men stepped inside, bound Emmond's hands behind him, and then hauled him to his feet. "I can't stand on it," Emmond said with a nod to his right leg. "Officer Hammond will be happy to help you along," the talking guard said. The other man nodded and slung his arm around Emmond's shoulder and supported some of his weight. They hobbled out of the cell and down the hallway. "Must have been a weak crime after all," the talking prisoner called after him. "Why is he here?" Emmond asked. The first guard looked back over his shoulder. "Killed a couple in Reverend's Park. Used a broken bottle. Pretty messy stuff." Emmond nodded, not needing to ask more. "One of yours broke my leg," he said as they moved through a doorway. The door slid back into the wall as they neared, and into a small chamber with a panel with lights on the side. The door slid back, and Officer Hammond leaned Emmond against the wall. Was all either of them said. The small chamber shook a little and then went still, but the lights on the panel moved from one to the other. It was quite amazing, seeing one light turn off and then another turn on. Each light had a symbol on it, and each time the light moved, a small bell rang from somewhere inside the wall. The chamber shook again, just a small shake, and then the door slid open again, and they were not in the same hallway they had just been in. No, they had traveled into a wide, open room with a high ceiling. It had to have been 3 or 4 stories tall, and surely a small town could fit inside the room. People in white or blue suits walked about, most of them tight-fitting and very strange looking. He hadn't seen such odd clothing in all his life. He had thought the white robes of the temple were strange. The 2 men led him through the people, waving and greeting some of them in turn, always walking in a nearly straight line. Some asked who he was, and the men always said a variation of the same answer. Junkie, dregs, wren, scum. Sweat was starting to spill out on his forehead as he fought the pain of his foot, trying not to let it touch the ground, or if it did, trying not to let it collide too hard. They reached the far end of the room and walked through a door, this one opening regularly. It was strange. Nothing he had seen so far seemed to be made of wood. It was all a semi-reflective surface, like polished marble, which couldn't be, of course. The cost would be impossible. Through the door was a small hallway at the end of which stood another door. Doors and hallways, back and forth, here and there. That's all Emmond had seen since reaching the temple. That, and an entirely new world with a city that couldn't possibly be as big as it seemed. Inside this door was a room with a table and 2 chairs, one on either side. A mirror nearly covered one wall. It was a dark room, the first one he had seen since being taken off the blue worm. The men pushed him down in the chair, ignoring his wincing, and left him, his arms still tied and now draped behind the back of the chair. He found he was breathing hard, noticing then that the air inside this place was much better than the air outside. He didn't have to wait long. The door opened and a man wearing a blue set of clothes and a smile entered. It looked genuine, the first genuine smile Emmond had seen in a long while. He sat across from Emmond and laid down a thin black book on the table between them. "A man who doesn't exist," he said, adjusting his seat and unbuttoning a button from the middle of his coat. It was an odd place to have only 2 buttons, Emmond thought. He didn't reply. The man had black hair, which was cut short like the rest of the men Emmond had seen, but unlike the rest, he had no black marks anywhere on his visible skin. There was a set of crisscrossing pink scars on his neck, but they were the only difference. He drew what looked like a thin pencil from the internal pocket of his blue coat and flipped open the black book. Emmond could see paintings inside, small as the size of the book, but so accurate to their subject that he could hardly believe it. There was a painting of himself atop the blue worm, a painting of Horace Relvin, dressed in a green shirt and black pants, running somewhere dark, and a painting of Katrina, her white robe still flapping around her, standing beneath what appeared to be a stone bridge. Their painter must have been astonishingly quick to capture all 3 of them and put their likeness to page as fast as he had. That, or Emmond had been sleeping for several weeks instead of a few hours. "You know them," the man said. Emmond met his eyes then and looked back at Relvin's painting. The coward. "Yes," Emmond said finally. "We know him as well. Mr. Rain has evaded us on a number of occasions, though we have never been quite able to get a hold of him." He made a grabbing motion with his left hand. "You see, he has a tendency to pop in and out like a mole, up and then down, and in no place you can predict. And then he shows up again, with you 2. "We are not with him." Emmond didn't bother to correct the man, calling Relvin Rain. Emmond was beginning to think that the man wasn't at all who he said he was. "Ah, but you appear to be." Emmond didn't answer. The man laid his pencil down and leaned back in his chair. He was young, Emmond thought, perhaps in the early part of his 2nd decade. "My name is Inspector Parker. I'm not here to tell you that you're a druggie or on phenaprone or that you're some thief or vagabond. I don't think those things are true, but I do think you're mixed with something you don't have enough understanding of and are in a place unfamiliar to you. Is that so far off the mark?" "I would like to see medicine man regarding my ankle," Emmond said. "I fear it might not be recoverable." "Nasty-looking thing," Parker agreed. "Yes, of course we can have that healed up quickly. But who are you, sir?" "I am no sir. I am Emmond Sarren of Wythe and Dara, hunter by trade." At this, the inspector tilted his head to the side, not hiding his interest. "A hunter? Is that why you're with Rain? Not with him, but hunting him? Are there bounties beyond our own that we aren't aware of?" "No bounty," Emmond said. "Revenge." He had said it, finally. If Eva's mother was there, she would have flicked him on the ear, telling him she knew it all along, that it wasn't holy justice, but simple bloodlust, death for a death, something powerful and strong that could cloud a man's judgment. She had warned him, and he had denied it, but it didn't seem like it mattered anymore. "He wronged you," the man said. Emmond opened his mouth to speak, but found the words were lost or hiding. He didn't want to tell this man anyway. What had happened with his wife was his own business, his own pain and sadness to worry about. Telling the prisoner about Eva seemed different somehow. "Why am I here?" he asked instead. "To help us," Inspector Parker explained. "To help us find Rain." "Where is here?" "Sky City, up quarter precinct, interrogation room 36. Emmond's heart was pounding in his chest. "Is this a world beyond my own?" The man stared, then nodded slowly. "You do not exist here, if that's what you mean. There are no records of you, not from your face, or your blood, or ECG signature. Strangely, too, your blood is real. There is no artificial heart in your chest. You have had no reconstruction on your face or fingers. You are authentic, and yet you do not exist." "I am here in front of you," Emmond said. "Does that not mean something?" "You are real," the man admitted, "but not according to our reality." He laughed. "You see, we can become quite confusing rather quickly." "Another world," Emmond muttered to himself. "Yes, I believe so," Parker answered. You see, rain has disappeared on and off for several decades, coming and going in and out, without so much as a reason or pattern that we can find. It has been many, many years since he was last seen, but here he appears again. Traveling from my world to yours. Or other worlds as well, yes. Emmond paused before speaking. How many other worlds are there? What is another world? Parker tipped his head, thinking. Depends on your grasp of quantum mechanics. Emmond's blank expression must have been enough, for the man laughed. Either way, there is at least one other place rain travels to, but now he has returned. You've captured him? Emmond asked, a sprig of hope rising within him. The man shook his head, guarding something with the tight line of his mouth. We only caught sight of him for a moment before he vanished once more. But you think he remains in this world? Yes. And what makes you believe he isn't already gone? Faith, I suppose. It was a word Emmond had grown to dislike. Did the potter craft your world as well? Parker looked confused, though a hint of understanding was there as well. For from dust you are, and to dust you will be. I suppose I could assume a potter is the creator of all. Not many hold to those ideas anymore. What ideas do you have now? Cosmic chaos long ago, achieving order through the age of the stars? Nothing. He snapped his fingers. And now everything. Bang. Just like that. Seems unlikely. Parker shrugged, not bothered by it. Either way, the origin of life doesn't matter so much as the current state of life, where we are now, and where we are going. What do you want with him? Emmond asked. His capture. What has he done? It's not for you to know. Then why would I help you? It's easy to kill a man who does not exist. Emmond paused. Finally, something he understood in this world. A threat. Help you or I die? Something like that. I have no way of knowing where he will be. I do not know this world. But you do know her. Parker spun the painting of Catriona around so that her face was right side up, facing Emmond. You know her, and she knows you. Yes, Emmond admitted. If we can bring you close to her, will she lead us to Rain? Emmond shrugged. You're assuming that she can find him better than you can? Parker leaned forward and put both hands on the table, straddling the painting. Then he reached a hand into the pile and slid out a new picture, one hidden by the others. He spun that out to Emmond, landing it just beside the painting of Catriona by herself. It was a window, large and square with dim light inside, and Emmond could make out a set of tables. One table was nearest the window, and plates and bowls were strewn about, some with remnants of food, most without. A man in green with gray wavy hair sat on one side of the table, and a woman with long blonde hair, bound in 2 braids, sat across from him. It seems they found each other, Parker said. Emmond didn't like the new clothing. The pants were too tight, and there were seals in strange places. Zippers, Parker called them. The undershirt was simple, a new fabric, but not unlike what he was used to. But he was given a soft orange jacket shirt with a fold-over seam in the middle, this with a zipper as well as buttons. It was faded orange, much softer than his prison attire, almost tan. The collar felt stiff, and the cuffs were thick. Only the boots did he like. Really, overall, he was happy to have his right leg working again without pain, and to not have his hands bound behind him. Inspector Parker had led them out of the room, interrogation room 36 he called it, and down the hallway into his side room. There was another chamber with light buttons and shaking, and they traveled somewhere else. Emmond knew he would be lost if he was left on his own. Once the chamber shook again and the door opened, the inspector led Emmond to a room that appeared to be a washroom. He took a shower, as Parker called it, and changed into the clothes he now wore as he followed the man through the large central hub of the precinct. They had then gone to a series of whitewashed rooms, and Emmond was placed on a bed, his right leg propped slightly higher than the left. A woman wearing a blue mask laughed and made conversation with Parker and Emmond only partially. A woman wearing a blue mask laughed and made conversation with Parker that Emmond only partially understood. There were common words, but their collective meaning was entirely lost. Several things were stuck into Emmond's leg, and then the entire bed rolled into a small tunnel, and there was a loud beeping. He imagined he would feel pain, tremendous pain, but the worst of it was when the woman stuck his leg over and over, and even then, that wasn't horrible. The bed had slid out of the tunnel, and just that easily his leg felt strong. It was a strange world. So much was foreign. They had left the medical room, and Parker led Emmond back into the large central area with high ceilings and wide walls filled with people. How can I understand you? Emmond asked as they walked through the crowd of men and women in whites and blues. Parker tapped behind his own ear. The pebble. It's a neural transmitter, allowing you to understand all languages in the directory. Surprisingly, it contains your language. He smiled at Emmond. Perhaps we are in your universe, after all. Universe, Emmond said slowly. The man waved his arms around in big colliding circles, like he was scooping something from the air. Everything around us, the planets, the stars beyond, everything within. The universe. We don't know so much in my world, Emmond admitted. Our world is much smaller. That's not so bad sometimes. They entered a second large room, this one lined with those small floating carriages like the one he had first been placed in. He asked Inspector Parker about the man, officer, who had re-broken his ankle, but Parker didn't give a definitive answer. You have pictures for all that occurs here, and yet there is no painting of that event? Parker simply shrugged and led Emmond into another chamber with light buttons. He informed him that it was called an elevator. It's not phi? Emmond asked. Magic? The man asked back. The way he asked made it sound like the same word, and Emmond wondered if the translator, Pebble, didn't quite know everything. Perhaps there was a small advantage there. Where does the power come from? Emmond asked. Is it from God, the potter, or another mystical source? Mystical, yes, I understand now. But no, not like that. Things run off electricity, oil, magnets, or solar energy. All machines, all fuel and gears. No magic, no God. No God? The elevator door slid open and they were in another large room filled with rows of those horseless carriages. How could there be so many? Not anymore, Parker said, leaning Eamon to one of the carriages. Maybe he's out there somewhere. There was a world truth movement maybe 30 years ago, and they acted as a political power, but there wasn't enough interest, not enough traction. The glass lid of the carriage slid back, revealing an interior with lights and chairs. Parker climbed in and offered the other seat in the front to Eamon. It was soft, like a firm cushion. The luxury of this world seemed to be without end. People pray to God when they're scared, or thank him when they win gambling money, or curse you in his name when they drink too much and have to spend the night here. But I don't know that anyone believes in it all, actually has faith, as they used to say. What about Trodden? Eamon asked. The glass screen slid back over them, closing off the carriage. There was a small whirring, and then they lifted up and slid out into the middle aisle between the other carriages. Eamon found himself gripping the handles in the sidewall. He could tell that Parker didn't understand his question. Evil, he elaborated, forcing himself to focus on the conversation and not their mode of travel. What of the opposite of God? A great door slid open partially, and the carriage eased out and down a slope and picked up speed. They moved along, and the road they were on merged with another wider road, and off they went, whizzing about among other carriages of various kinds, larger and smaller, faster and slower. Parker seemed to be hardly paying attention. The devil? He asked, glancing away from the path. It was dark outside, though bright white lights lit up their way, as did the lanterns mounted to the front of the carriages around them. The demon of heaven, ruler of hell? He shrugged. He I believe in. I see him every day. They cruised around several more carriages, and then Parker turned off a turning ramp in the road and down onto a much wider path where the machines were moving much slower. Why are you so worried about God and the devil? Eamon looked out the window, trying to take in all he could. So much world, so much more than anyone could imagine. Someone had to make all of this, he said quietly. We did, came the inspector's reply. Eamon looked at him, measuring him. This man was younger, arrogant, knew what he was about. The way he had interacted with the other men and women he worked with told Eamon much about the respect he held. They trusted him, knew he did good work. He was honest and smart, but his head was somewhere else, not in the past where things came from, but in the future where they were going. And who made you? Aliens, Parker laughed, and Eamon tried to smile even though he didn't understand the word. Come on, rest a bit and look at the sights. We have a long drive ahead of us. Eamon didn't argue and instead tried to settle into the seat. It was warm, and he noticed for the first time that it was raining outside. As they drove along, it was a car, Parker told him. Eamon watched the people they passed. Men and women, and some that might have been either, with strange hairstyles, long or short, colors he was used to, and some that he didn't think belonged in hair. The clothing was another story. He couldn't tell who was who by what they wore. In Dara, in what he had known as the land, blacksmiths looked like blacksmiths, preachers looked like preachers, cooks looked like cooks. The same was true of cobblers, builders, washmaids, and hunters. There was something that made sense for each faction, and with only small discrepancy, they all had a certain way of looking. But here, there was no such thing. Men who looked like they could be builders stood with women who seemed to be farmers. Teachers held hands with cooks and farriers. There was no pattern to any of it, nothing that could be pulled out and understood. He could hear no sounds from the outside, for the walls and windows on the car were all closed. But Parker had pushed some set of buttons on the light-up wall of the cars inside, and music had played, soft like a flute, with tinkling drums and other strange sounds that he hadn't heard before. It was music, certainly, but nothing like he knew. He was having a hard time believing that it was not Phi. And where were they going? To find Horace Relvin. Rain, of course. Eamon forced himself to focus and not give in to the awe of his surroundings. They were trying to find Catriona because she would lead them to Relvin. What was the missing piece here? If Relvin had disappeared on and off for the past several decades, then that could only mean that he had the ability to move between worlds. With all of their mechanical advancements, surely they must have something that would open doorways in the floor, just as Relvin had, and yet it seemed that they possessed no such power. Mayhap that was Phi, or magic, after all, or God, even, though there appeared to be a terrible lack of divine fear among these people. Why was Catriona with Relvin? Perhaps that was the greatest mystery of all. Parker had called them photos, the smooth paintings he had shown him, and in that photo, it appeared that Relvin and she were sitting together without any coercion on either side, sharing a meal together, the man who had killed her husband. But hadn't she wanted to speak with him first? Was that not what she had said on their second day in the road, just west of the Dara Valley? It seemed like she was making good on that desire. A thought came to Eamon, and it started a small icicle of fear in his stomach. If these people in this advanced world could not travel back to where Eamon was from, then his only way home was through Relvin. His shoulders sank in the seat, and he didn't try to hide it. That was why Catriona was working with the enemy. She wanted to ensure her way home. The car slowed to a stop, and Eamon looked ahead to see them sitting close to another car in front of them. This one had a different shape, more boxy and less sleek, dark green in color. Rain streaked the glass and flickered in the moving lights of the city around them. I cannot give you a weapon, Parker said, getting Eamon's attention, because we do not trust you. If rounds start flying, take cover and stick close. Are we close to them? The glass slid back and rain sprang down the cabin. Close to where they are. This is where the investigation starts. Emmond nodded and climbed out of the car and onto the street. It looked like a solid sheet of black stone with white and yellow lines marked in it at various places. The glass slid back into place, and Parker motioned for Emmond to follow him. They crossed the street and entered a building that reached so high into the darkness of the city that Emmond couldn't see anywhere near the top. It was all just moving lights. The inside of the place smelled like food, sweet and comforting. Emmond followed Parker as he walked up to the counter where a fat little lady stood, a white apron only barely covering her massive bulk. Lined in neat rows on both sides of the woman, hidden in glass cases, sat an assortment of baked treats of various shapes and sizes and colors. Emmond's mouth watered, and he wondered at the last food he had eaten. The little round baker smiled sweetly at them and clasped her hands in front of her, lifting her shoulders a little. Her face nearly folded in on itself when she smiled. Emmond couldn't help but smile back. Parker pulled a small black slate from the pocket of his blue jacket shirt and held it out in front of him toward the woman. Light shone from the object, and Emmond could see that the woman was reading it. "Inspector Parker, and this is my associate, Inspector Reynolds. We are here on an investigation for the city, up Quarter Division." The woman's smile faded, and she began to look worried. "Oh my, oh dear. Officers, please, can I get you anything? Anything to warm you up. Terrible out in the rain, oh my. What do you need to know?" "Nothing, ma'am," Parker said brusquely. "Just some questions." He turned the black slate to himself and moved his hands over the surface of it, changing the image again and again until it showed a picture of Relvin. At the same time, it wasn't quite Relvin. The short glimpse that Emmond got of it made it seem the most like a drawn painting so far. He was facing out, his full features in view, but it wasn't quite right. His nose was a little too large, and his eyes weren't the right green color, and his hair was much longer in real life than in the photo. So they hadn't seen him up close, not yet. It was an interesting turn. "This man was here?" "Oh yes, him and his wife, yes." She smiled her imploding smile. "Very lovely, very kind. Came in several times and then no more, a few days back." Wheels spun in Emmond's mind. A few days back? There were lies, then, or things he had thought to be true. How long had he been asleep, after all? What had passed in the time between lying in the back of the first officer's car and waking up in that prison cell with a broken ankle? Parker glanced at him, and Emmond just gave a single nod, not letting the calm break on his face. He was into something that was worse than he could have thought. The truth was somewhere else, perhaps back in his world, and the way back seemed only through a murdering fanatic. What did Parker really want? "What are the chances you might know where they've gone to next?" the inspector asked. The woman shrugged, and suddenly Emmond thought she looked frightened. The smile was gone, and there was a little shaking jiggle to the fat where her chin should have been. "They didn't say anything to old me, if that's what you mean." Parker smiled and slid the small black thing back into his jacket shirt. "Nope, didn't mean anything in particular at all. Just want to find the right people to spread the reward around with. Our friends are in some trouble, as you might have guessed by now." "Reward?" Funny how she latched onto just that part. Emmond saw the broad, false smile lighting on Parker's face. "Sure, there's a handsome amount put up by Central. Just have to turn them in, that's all." "What have they done?" the woman asked, the quivering still fluttering the jowls of her face. "Thefts, mostly," Parker said. He said it as though it were casual conversation. "A few other bad things, but mostly thieving. Just rough criminals." "They seem so kind," the woman said. Parker smiled solemnly. "That's how they appear." There was a pause. No one spoke, and finally Parker shrugged and turned away. "I thought I heard Cove." Parker turned back, and in that motion, Emmond saw the hard seriousness on his face. The false humor was gone. The playing little teasing games was over. He looked older, even. "Cove?" The woman nodded. The fear had returned. I thought so." The inspector tapped his fingers on the counter and nodded. He turned to Emmond. "Come on, then." "The reward?" "The reward?" the woman called after them, but Parker ushered Emmond back through the door of the shop. Once outside, Emmond spoke. "Cove?" "A short drive from here. They likely went on foot. All rented car travel is tracked." "Why aren't there pictures of them on the inside of the bakery?" The inspector reached the car and climbed inside, and Emmond followed, grateful to be out of the rain. "Government Privacy Act," Parker explained. "Not allowed to have access to internal machines. Bit stupid if you ask me. It's for their own safety, after all." "Is it?" Parker turned the car out and eased it into the sparse flow of vehicles. "Doesn't matter either way. We're so low in the city that there's hardly any cameras or audio trackers anyway. Certainly no pulse sensors. Not that your girl would have anything anyway, and Rain barely has a signature." "Okay," Emmond said, not understanding any of what he had just been told. "What's your angle here, Emmond?" Emmond turned to the man and found he was staring at him, not focused on the road at all. The youth in his eyes was inquisitive, wondering. "I want to find Rain," he corrected. "Why?" "He killed someone I love." Parker opened his mouth but closed it again slowly, his eyes still searching. "You wear no ring, so was this woman one you had planned to marry?" Emmond wasn't sure what a ring had to do with things. Men did not wear jewelry in Dara. Of course, Eva wore a ring, though not on her finger anymore. She kept it on a chain about her neck, so as to not get in the way of her housework. "Have you a woman?" Emmond asked, trying to divert the conversation. "You didn't answer my question." Emmond let out a breath of air. "Yes, she was my wife. My only one, until the end of our days." He bit his tongue against the words, understanding the sentiment in what he said, but really not certain if he believed it. The further away he got from home and the more days that passed between Eva's death and his justice, he found the doubt growing in him. Could it be true that Relvin had found Eva and Henrik in the throes of illicit passion? Emmond couldn't let his thoughts follow that line and shrugged them away. "How long has it been since I was taken to your large prison place?" he asked. Parker seemed surprised by the question, answering after a moment of thought. "Nearly a day, not much. If you want my help, do not lie to me." "How long?" "The database is vast and stretches across the city and the others of the world, and even to the 2 colonies. There is much time for searching, even with the near quantum computing cap." "How long, Parker?" 11 days. Emmond felt the strength slide out from under him. 11 days in an unconscious state, in a land not his own, away from his children. He only intended to be away for 2 or 3 days, and return and not leave them again. Yet here he was, and with more days still, if he had to guess. "I thought it was 1 night," Emmond whispered. "Who told you it was so short?" Parker's voice was accusatory, harsh, defensive. "I assumed." "No one asked you to assume. No one told you a thing." "I have to get back," Emmond said, hating the pleading sound in his voice. "You have to help us, or you die here." "I'm a prisoner." Parker laughed, looking at him as though shocked. "Since when have you not been? Because you have no clinks on you? Because you are wearing civilian clothes? Because I fixed your leg and let you talk? You are as free as a dog walking on a tight leash. If you pull away, it will grow only tighter. Right now, Emmond of Lost World, you are a tool. You don't have a family." Inspector Parker looked at Emmond once, then looked away to the road. "We're done here." "You don't have anyone to go back to," Emmond went on. "Are you the only one who can look into a man's eyes and read his soul? Is it the coin or the elevation of power that drives you? Not family, that I can see. Perhaps they are lost or gone, and perhaps it is your fault. No more. You would know what it means to miss them. Understand me when I say that I need to return to my home, to my family. Have you no father or mother even? Where are they, Inspector? Who loves you?" Parker reached into his pocket and removed a thin black bar the length of a feather quill. A small click sounded and the bar extended to the length of his forearm. A blue light buzzed on the end and Parker jammed it into Emmond's ribs. It was fire, exploding and covering his whole body, making his teeth chatter and his arms tighten and curl about him. The light blinked off and Emmond was left sweating and twitching, his jaw clenched too tightly to speak. "No more," Parker said again and collapsed the bar, returned it to his pocket, and kept driving. This has been an audio production of Hunter of the Setting Sun by N.N. Shepherd. Music by Josiah Fursanity. Cover art by Levi Bushnell. Editing by Josiah Fursanity and Levi Bushnell. Read by the author. Tune in next time for another episode of Hunter of the Setting Sun.